In the fertile plains of Igbisa, where the red earth stained the feet of farmers and warriors alike, Ogunkole was known as both a hunter and a patriot. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with eyes that carried the quiet fire of ancestral pride. The elders often said the spirits of the forest favored him, even the winds seemed to part when he walked. Yet for all his strength, his heart belonged to one woman, Aderonke, the weaver whose laughter could soften the hardest day. During the annual Ogun festival, beneath drums and swirling white garments, Ogunkole pledged himself to Aderonke before the shrine of the Iron God. Palm wine flowed, kola nuts were broken, and elders blessed their union. But beyond Igbisa's joy, the shadow of the Oyo Empire stretched long, taxes rising, soldiers prowling. None imagined that love and celebration would soon give way to blood and rebellion. Rumors spread that Oyo tax collectors were arriving with soldiers. They demanded tribute twice what was agreed upon, accusing Igbisa of hiding wealth. The Baal pleaded for patience, but the Oyo captain mocked the elders, calling them weak and their traditions backward. When villagers resisted, violence erupted. In the chaos, Aderonke, caught between fleeing children and armed men, was struck down. Ogunkole arrived too late, cradling her lifeless body as drums of celebration turned to wails of mourning. That night, he swore before Ogun's shrine that her blood would not soak the earth in vain. The funeral rites were solemn. Women sang dirges while men fired muskets into the air. Ogunkole shaved his head and smeared ash across his chest, marking his vow of vengeance. The Ifa priest cast divination, warning that the path ahead was lined with betrayal and glory alike. As whispers of revolt began, some elders cautioned restraint. But young warriors gathered around Ogunkole, drawn by his grief and fury. They called him Aderonke's flame. And in the sacred grove, beneath towering irako trees, he began to forge an army. Training camps emerged in hidden forest clearings. Blacksmiths worked tirelessly, crafting spears and cutlasses. Hunters taught guerrilla tactics, striking from shadows and vanishing into thick bush paths known only to Igbisa's sons. Meanwhile, King Adelani of Oyo received reports of unrest. Confident in his empire's strength, he dismissed Ogunkole as a grieving fool. Yet his generals advised caution, sensing something deeper. A rebellion fueled not just by anger, but by love and ancestral duty. Ogunkole's first strike was swift. They ambushed an Oyo caravan at dawn, reclaiming stolen goods and sending a message. Survivors fled, carrying tales of a warrior whose eyes burned like coals. Victory ignited hope across Igbisa. Villages pledged allegiance, offering food, warriors, and secret routes. But Ogunkole knew the empire would not ignore this insult. War was no longer a whisper, it was a storm gathering on the horizon. King Adelani summoned his council. Draped in royal indigo, he swore to crush the rebellion before it spread. Yet a quiet advisor, Chief Adeyemi, warned that oppression breeds martyrs. Back in Igbisa, Ogunkole dreamed of Aderonke. In his vision, she stood beside Ogun's forge, urging him not just to fight, but to build something lasting. He awoke torn between vengeance and vision. The second battle was brutal. Oyo forces clashed with Igbisa warriors in open fields. Spears met muskets, chance met cannon fire. Ogunkole's strategy of feigned retreat lured Oyo troops into swampy ground where they faltered. Though victorious, losses weighed heavily. Among the fallen was Tund, Ogunkole's childhood friend. Grief hardened his resolve, but cracks began forming within his ranks. A new figure emerged, Morinkeji, a priestess warrior who claimed visions of Aderonke's spirit guiding the rebellion. Her presence inspired many, yet some elders mistrusted her growing influence. Ogunkole found comfort in her counsel. As affection bloomed between them, whispers spread. Was he betraying Aderonke's memory, or honoring her by living on? King Adelani deployed elite cavalry. Their arrival brought devastation to border villages. Smoke filled the skies, and refugees poured into Igbisa's heartland. Ogunkole retaliated with night raids, using traditional war chants to terrify enemies. Stories of the ghost of Igbisa spread through Oyo ranks, eroding morale. Betrayal struck. A trusted lieutenant secretly negotiated with Oyo, seeking wealth over freedom. The ambush nearly captured Ogunkole, but Moronkeji's warning saved him. The traitor was executed publicly, yet the act left Ogunkole shaken. Leadership demanded ruthless decisions, and each one chipped away at the man he once was. The harmattan wind blew fine dust across Igbisa as Ogunkole gathered the allied leaders beneath the sacred Irako tree. Representatives from Aduoto, Alaro, and small Egba border settlements answered his call. They came bearing gifts, goats, dried fish, palm oil, and warriors sworn by blood oath. Before negotiations began, colonnuts were broken, libations poured to Ogun and Sango, and each man touched the earth in solemn pledge. Yet unity came with pride. Chief Laro of Alaro demanded equal command, claiming his warriors were more battle-hardened. Ogunkole listened, his voice calm but firm. "This war is not for glory," he said, "but for dignity." The words silenced the gathering, but ambition lingered in hidden corners of men's hearts. Training intensified as Ogunkole reorganized his growing army. He appointed divisions, archers, hunters, cavalry riders, and drummers who communicated commands through coded rhythms. Traditional war paint marked their faces, white chalk streaked across dark skin as symbols of ancestral protection. Moronkeji began leading spiritual preparations before each drill. She burned herbs, chanting incantations that made even seasoned warriors shiver. Her presence grew powerful. Her voice steady like thunder before rain. Some warriors whispered she was more than a priestess, that she was chosen by unseen forces to guide the rebellion. An unexpected visitor arrived at dusk, an Oyo deserter named Badamosi. He claimed King Adelani was mobilizing elite cavalry, and that spies were already among Igbisa ranks. Though suspicious, Ogunkole allowed him audience before the council fire. That night, as drums faded, Moronkeji quietly confessed a secret to Ogunkole. Years ago, before dedicating herself to priesthood, she had been promised to an Oyo nobleman, one close to the king. If recognized, her presence could weaken their cause. Ogunkole felt betrayal's sting but saw only honesty in her eyes. Love and suspicion now wrestled within him. War came sooner than expected. Oyo cavalry charged through the northern border, their horses kicking up clouds of red dust. Muskets thundered while spears flashed in sunlight. Ogunkole's strategy relied on terrain. He ordered feigned retreats toward marshy ground. The plan worked. Horses stumbled in hidden mud traps, and Igbisa warriors struck swiftly from surrounding bushes. Victory chants echoed, but losses were heavy. Among the dead was Chief Laro's son, igniting simmering resentment toward Ogunkole's command. Funeral rites were performed at moonrise. Women wailed while masquerades danced in solemn procession, honoring the fallen. Ogunkole knelt beside grieving families, his own sorrow renewed with memories of Aderonke. Chief Laro publicly accused Ogunkole of reckless ambition. "Your vengeance blinds you," he spat. Tension thickened the air. Ogunkole, instead of retaliation, offered his own blood in ritual apology, slicing his palm and letting it fall upon sacred earth. The humility disarmed many, but not all. King Adelani convened his royal court in Oyo. Draped in embroidered agbada, he listened as generals recounted their humiliations. Anger simmered beneath his calm exterior. He ordered reinforcement battalions and placed a bounty on Ogunkole's head. Yet within palace walls, dissent brewed. A prince, Aderonke, questioned whether oppression justified rebellion. His words were met with harsh silence. The throne trembled, not from swords, but from doubt. Back in Igbisa, Moronkeji led a midnight ritual to seek divine guidance. A white ram was sacrificed, its blood marking sacred symbols. The Ifa priest cast divination and revealed troubling news. Betrayal would come from within, not from Oyo. Ogunkole tightened security but trusted his men. Badamosi, the deserter, quietly mapped camp positions under the guise of assistance. His loyalty, like shifting sand, remained uncertain. A bold campaign unfolded as Ogunkole targeted an Oyo supply depot. Under cover of darkness, warriors crawled through tall grasses, guided by coated drumbeats echoing from distant hills. The raid succeeded spectacularly. Food, gunpowder, and horses were seized. Spirits soared, and songs praising Ogunkole spread like wildfire across neighboring towns. Yet success inflated egos. Some allies began speaking of carving their own kingdoms once Oyo fell. During a celebratory feast, tension erupted. Chief Laro openly challenged Ogunkole's authority again, accusing him of favoring Morinkeji's council over elders. The argument nearly became violent. Morinkeji shocked the gathering by revealing her past betrothal to an Oyo noble, preempting rumors. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Instead of condemnation, she declared her devotion to Igbisa and offered to leave if her presence endangered unity. Ogunkole stood beside her, affirming his trust. The gesture strengthened some loyalties while hardening opposition among others. The prophecy of betrayal materialized at dawn. Badamosi attempted to flee with critical battle plans, only to be captured at the outskirts of camp. Under interrogation, he admitted serving Oyo all along. The council demanded brutal execution. Ogunkole hesitated, knowing mercy might be seen as weakness. Ultimately, justice was swift. Badamosi was publicly executed before the shrine of Ogun. Silence followed, heavy and uneasy. As night fell, Ogunkole stood alone, staring toward Oyo's distant horizon. Victory felt closer than ever, yet cracks within his alliance widened. The war was no longer only against an empire, it was against ambition, mistrust, and the fragile nature of unity itself. The dry season stretched long, and with it came hunger. Farms abandoned for war yielded little harvest, and women now ground cassava in smaller portions. Children cried at night from empty stomachs, and murmurs began to rise among the people. Freedom was noble, but survival was urgent. Ogunkole walked through the villages without escorts, seeing the toll of his rebellion. He ordered his captains to guard farmlands and escort traders, balancing war with sustenance. Yet in the privacy of his hut, he wrestled with doubt. Was vengeance worth the suffering of his own people? Morinkeji urged him to consider sending envoys to Oyo for negotiation. A warrior who cannot bend, she said softly, will eventually break. Her words unsettled him, for they echoed Aderonke's gentler wisdom. At council, the idea sparked outrage. Chief Laro mocked it as cowardice. But others, weary of bloodshed, listened closely. Ogunkole remained silent, torn between pride and responsibility, as factions within his alliance hardened. In Oyo, King Adelani learned a troubling truth. The captain responsible for Aderonke's death had acted recklessly without direct royal order. Furious at the damage done, Adelani ordered the captain's family stripped of titles and lands. He quietly spread this news through traders, hoping to fracture the moral foundation of the rebellion. If Ogunkole learned the killing was unauthorized, would his fire cool? Adelani gambled on doubt as a weapon. The message reached Igbisa through neutral merchants. During a heated gathering, the news was presented before Ogunkole. Some elders saw opportunity for peace, others saw deception. Ogunkole felt his chest tighten. If Aderonke's death was not the king's command, then his war had grown beyond personal revenge. That night, he knelt before Ogun's shrine, asking whether his blade now served justice, or pride. Rather than retreat, Ogunkole chose escalation. He declared the war no longer about one life, but about Igbisa's dignity. His speech stirred the young warriors, who cheered beneath torchlight. To prove their strength, he planned a daring infiltration into Oyo territory. Selected fighters disguised themselves as traders and hunters, slipping through guarded routes. It was a gamble that would either humiliate the empire, or destroy the rebellion entirely. The infiltration succeeded beyond expectation. Ogunkole's men sabotaged supply lines and freed captives from forced labor camps. Fires erupted across Oyo's outskirts, sending panic rippling toward the capital. Inside the palace, King Adelani felt the ground shift beneath his feet. Courtiers whispered of omens, and Prince Aderonke openly questioned the empire's moral standing. The throne no longer seemed untouchable. Encouraged by success, allied leaders grew bolder and greedier. Chief Laro secretly negotiated with a minor Oyo official, seeking personal recognition if peace was brokered. Moronkeji sensed unrest. During divination, the Ifa priest revealed a symbol of a snake coiled beneath a throne. Not all enemies wear foreign cloth, he warned. Ogunkole listened, but fatigue clouded his judgment. A major battle erupted near the Ogun River. Oyo forces, reinforced with cannon and cavalry, clashed with Igbisa warriors at dawn. The river ran red as chants of Sango clashed with the roar of gunpowder. Ogunkole displayed unmatched bravery, cutting through enemy ranks. Yet numbers overwhelmed his men. By sunset, they were forced to retreat into dense forest. Victory slipped from their grasp for the first time in months. In the aftermath, blame spread like wildfire. Chief Laro accused Ogunkole of poor strategy, while others whispered of betrayal. Supplies dwindled further, and deserters began slipping away at night. Moronkeji confronted Ogunkole gently but firmly. "Your war has grown larger than your heart can carry alone," she said. For the first time, he admitted fear. Not of death, but of failing his people. Determined to regain momentum, Ogunkole devised a bold march toward Oyo itself. Rather than hiding in forests, he would confront the empire openly, daring Aderonke to face him. As drums echoed across Igbisa, warriors prepared for what many believed would be the final campaign. Mothers tied protective charms around their sons' wrists. Elders poured libations for safe passage. Ogunkole stood before his army, eyes fixed on the distant horizon. The path ahead promised glory or ruin. And somewhere within Oyo's palace walls, King Aderonke sensed the approaching storm that threatened to shake his throne to its very foundation. The march toward Oyo was unlike any campaign before it. Ogunkole no longer relied solely on ambush and forest cover, he advanced in formation, drums beating steadily like a second heartbeat for his warriors. Villagers along the path watched with a mixture of fear and pride as the army moved past. Men adorned in amulets, women singing war songs that carried blessings and warnings alike. Yet beneath the unity, exhaustion festered. Supplies were thin, tempers shorter. Ogunkole felt the weight of every gaze upon him. He was no longer merely Aderonke's grieving lover, he was the symbol of Igbisa's hope, and hope demanded more than bravery. It demanded victory. Near the outskirts of Oyo territory, an unexpected ally appeared, Prince Aderonke. Secretly disillusioned with his father's rule, he sent a coded message offering inside information in exchange for protection should the rebellion succeed. Ogunkole's council erupted in debate. Trusting a prince of Oyo seemed madness, yet the opportunity was irresistible. Moronkeji advised caution, sensing destiny's hand moving unseen. Ogunkole chose to accept the prince's guidance, stepping deeper into a web of uncertainty. Under Aderonke's direction, Ogunkole's forces struck at a vulnerable garrison near the capital. The attack was swift and humiliating for Oyo. Prisoners were taken, and the rebellion's banner was raised high enough to be seen from palace towers. King Aderonke's fury burned quietly. Rather than panic, he began laying a trap. He instructed loyal generals to spread rumors of weakness, inviting Ogunkole to press closer to the heart of Oyo. Celebrations erupted among Igbisa warriors after their bold victory. Drums thundered, masquerades danced, and palm wine flowed freely. For a fleeting moment, freedom felt tangible. But Moronkeji noticed subtle movements among allied captains. Chief Laro's camp held private meetings late into the night. Ambition once again coiled beneath unity. Ogunkole, intoxicated by progress, dismissed warnings as mere paranoia. The trap sprang at dawn. Oyo reinforcements emerged from hidden valleys, encircling Ogunkole's forward battalion. Cannon fire shattered formation, and musket shots rained down like iron hail. Despite fierce resistance, the rebels suffered heavy losses. Ogunkole fought fiercely, cutting a path through enemy lines, but retreat became unavoidable. The dream of an easy march into Oyo faded into smoke and blood. In the aftermath, whispers hardened into accusations. Some claimed Prince Aderonke had betrayed them. Others pointed to Chief Laro's suspicious movements. the alliance teetered on collapse. Moronkeji called for a cleansing ritual to restore unity. A sacred fire was lit, and warriors passed through its smoke to symbolize renewed loyalty. Yet even as chants rose, distrust lingered in quiet glances and clenched fists. That night, Ogunkole fell violently ill. Poison had found its way into his food. Panic swept through camp as herbalists worked frantically. Moronkeji identified the toxin and brewed a potent antidote from forest roots. As Ogunkole hovered between life and death, a confession emerged. A minor ally, manipulated by promises of Oyo gold, had carried out the poisoning under Chief Lero's influence. The revelation shattered what little trust remained. Chief Lero attempted escape but was captured before sunrise. The council demanded execution, but Ogunkole, weakened yet conscious, ordered a public trial according to tradition. Elders presided, invoking ancestral judgment. Lero was stripped of titles and condemned. His execution was swift, yet the cost was greater than a single life. The rebellion had consumed one of its own leaders, and unity now rested on fragile ground. Word reached King Aderonke that internal strife plagued the rebels. Sensing opportunity, he prepared his most formidable army yet. War drums echoed across Oyo, summoning seasoned warriors and cavalry from distant provinces. Prince Aderonke, fearing exposure, ceased communication. Ogunkole realized he stood alone once more. The path ahead would no longer rely on alliances or secret bargains, only strength and fate. The decisive battle began at the plains just outside Oyo's walls. Dawn painted the sky crimson as if foretelling bloodshed. Ogunkole stood at the front line, gripping his blade, Moronkeji chanting prayers behind him. The clash was thunderous. Spears met steel, cannon smoke clouded vision, and war cries shook the earth. Ogunkole fought like a man possessed, cutting down enemies as if guided by unseen hands. Yet Oyo's numbers were relentless. By sunset, the rebels were overwhelmed. Moronkeji was seized amid the chaos while covering Ogunkole's retreat. As he was pulled back by his surviving men, he looked toward Oyo's towering gates, knowing the war had reached its most dangerous turning point. The forest swallowed what remained of Ogunkole's army. Wounded men leaned on broken spears, their songs reduced to low murmurs of pain. The defeat at Oyo's gates hung over them like a curse. Worse than the loss was Moronkeji's capture. Her absence felt like the silence after a drum is split in two. Ogunkole refused to rest. Against the pleas of his captains, he insisted on scouting Oyo's movements himself. Grief threatened to cloud his judgment again, but this time it was not vengeance that drove him, it was love, and the burden of leadership he could no longer escape. Within Oyo's towering walls, Moronkeji stood before King Aderonke. She was unbowed, wrists bound yet spirit unbroken. When asked to denounce Ogunkole publicly, she refused, invoking ancestral curses upon injustice. Aderonke studied her carefully. He saw no ordinary priestess but a woman of conviction. Rather than execute her immediately, he chose to use her as leverage. Word was sent secretly, Ogunkole could trade surrender for her life. The message reached the rebel camp under cover of night. Ogunkole listened in silence as the envoy relayed the king's offer. Many urged him to reject it as a trap. Others, weary of endless bloodshed, saw an opportunity to end the war. Ogunkole wrestled with himself. To surrender meant humiliation. To refuse meant risking Moronkeji's death. He withdrew into solitude, seeking counsel from the spirits and from the memory of Aderonke, whose voice seemed to whisper that true strength was not always in the sword. Meanwhile, unrest brewed within Oyo itself. Prince Aderonke quietly rallied sympathizers who questioned the prolonged war. Markets suffered, farmers were conscripted, and murmurs against the throne grew louder. Aderonke sensed the shifting tide. He realized that even victory over Ogunkole might not silence dissent. For the first time, he considered whether rebellion could be extinguished by force alone, or if martyrdom would ignite something far greater. Ogunkole chose action, not surrender, but strategy. He organized small, swift units to harass Oyo's outer defenses while secretly planning to infiltrate the city and rescue Morinkeji. Under the cover of Ogungun festival celebrations, when masquerades roamed freely and drums masked movement, his men slipped into Oyo disguised in ceremonial attire. Tradition became their camouflage, sacred culture turned into rebellion's shield. The infiltration nearly succeeded. Morinkeji was located in a guarded compound near the palace. Signals were exchanged, and escape routes mapped. But betrayal struck again. One of the disguised rebels panicked and revealed himself too soon. Chaos erupted. Guards overwhelmed the infiltrators, and Ogunkole himself was captured while shielding his men. Bound in chains of iron, he was dragged before the king he had defied for so long. The confrontation between Ogunkole and King Aderonke was heavy with unspoken truths. The king admired the rebels' courage. Ogunkole saw a ruler trapped by pride and legacy. Aderonke offered exile instead of execution if Ogunkole publicly renounced rebellion. "Live," the king urged, "and let your people rebuild." But Ogunkole refused to trade dignity for breath. His defiance sealed his fate. News of Ogunkole's capture spread across Igbisa like wildfire. Women wailed, and elders beat drums in mourning though he still lived. Some allies considered retreating permanently into submission. Yet Morinkeji, still imprisoned, secretly communicated with Prince Aderonke. She planted seeds of doubt within him, urging him to consider what history would remember, a tyrant who silenced dissent, or a reformer who listened. Aderonke confronted his father privately, arguing that executing Ogunkole would transform him into legend. Aderonke's pride flared, but fear lingered beneath it. The empire had already paid dearly for this war. Still, the council demanded a public display of strength. Preparations for execution began. The date was announced, and captives from Igbisa were forced to witness what Oyo believed would be the end of rebellion. On the eve of execution, Ogunkole was allowed a final ritual bath according to tradition. Even in chains, he requested to pour libation to Ogun. The guards, uneasy but curious, permitted it. As he knelt, he no longer prayed for victory. He prayed for endurance, for Igbisa to remember why the war began, not merely how it ended. In the dim torchlight of his cell, Ogunkole finally understood, a man could be defeated in battle yet triumph in meaning. Morning approached, heavy and inevitable. The morning of execution arrived beneath a sky veiled in grey clouds. Drums thundered across Oyo's central square, summoning nobles, warriors, traitors, and captives alike. Ogunkole was led out in chains, yet his stride remained steady. Women from Igbisa wailed as he passed, but he did not lower his head. Before the assembled crowd, King Aderonke sat upon his carved throne, expression carved from stone. The square was thick with tension, as if even the air waited. Ogunkole's eyes scanned the faces, fear, anger, admiration. In that moment, he understood he no longer belonged to himself, he belonged to history. Aderonke granted him permission to speak, expecting curses or defiance. Instead, Ogunkole's voice rang calm and deep. He did not call for revenge. He spoke of dignity, of land tilled by ancestors, of children who deserved to grow without chains of tribute. His words unsettled the crowd. Even Oyo warriors shifted uneasily. He praised courage on both sides, declaring that true kingship listens to the cries of its people. The execution ground became a place of reflection rather than spectacle. From her guarded enclosure, Morinkeji watched with burning eyes. She whispered incantations under her breath, not to halt death but to seal legacy. Prince Aderonke, standing among the nobles, felt each word pierce his conscience. When Ogunkole finished speaking, silence lingered. For a heartbeat, even King Aderonke seemed uncertain. But the machinery of empire had already turned too far. The signal was given. The blade fell swiftly. Gasps erupted, some cried out, others knelt. Thunder cracked overhead as if Sango himself marked the moment. Ogunkole's body fell, but his name seemed to rise into the sky. Aderonke ordered his burial without ceremony, hoping to suppress martyrdom. Yet the people carried the story in whispers, and whispers traveled faster than decrees. In Igbisa, news of his death arrived with a traitor's trembling voice. Grief swept the land, but so did pride. Elders gathered beneath the Irako tree, recounting his journey from grieving lover to fearless commander. Traditional rites were performed in his honor. Though his body lay in Oyo, symbolic effigies were buried at home. Women composed songs, and children learned chants praising the man who dared to challenge empire. Within Oyo, unrest did not fade. Markets buzzed with quiet criticism, and soldiers whispered doubts. Prince Aderonke openly advocated reforms, lighter tribute, respect for smaller kingdoms, and shared governance. Aderonke, shaken by the execution's aftermath, began to see that force had limits. Ogunkole's death had not extinguished rebellion, it had transformed it into an idea. Moronkeji was eventually released under quiet terms, exiled rather than executed. She returned to Igbisa draped in white, a symbol of both mourning and spiritual authority. Upon arrival, she did not call for immediate war. Instead, she urged patience and cultural preservation. "Let his sacrifice be seed," she declared. "Not fire that consumes us again." Years passed, and stories of Ogunkole grew larger than life. Some said he fought 10 men at once, others claimed Ogun himself guided his blade. Festivals began to include reenactments of his battles, blending fact and legend. Young boys bore his name proudly. Girls sang of his love for Aderonke and loyalty to Moronkeji. The narrative evolved from vengeance to resilience. King Aderonke aged under the weight of his reign. Though he maintained power, he implemented gradual reforms inspired by necessity, and perhaps guilt. Igbisa gained increased autonomy, tribute reduced quietly to prevent renewed uprising. Prince Aderonke became a bridge between kingdoms, ensuring that rebellion's lessons were not forgotten. Ogunkole's name, once forbidden in Oyo, became impossible to silence. On a quiet evening many years later, Moronkeji sat before a circle of children beneath the same sacred Irako tree where rebellion had begun. Her voice was steady as she told them of courage born from love, of mistakes and sacrifice, of a man who chose dignity over fear. The war had ended long ago, but its spirit endured in customs, songs, and a strengthened sense of identity. Ogunkole did not live to see a fully free Igbisa, yet he became the symbol that shaped its path. Empires rise and fall, but stories endure. And in the red earth of Igbisa, where drums still echo at dusk, the name Ogunkole remains not as a rebel defeated, but as a patriot remembered, forever woven into the fabric of a people who refused to forget.